I've got a lovely, quick and easy project for you today, and it's this Stair storage basket. Now, as usual, the cutted list is in the description box below, so let's get started. Okay, so the basket is made up of 7 pieces, but because there are quite a few small pieces that are of similar sizes, just so we can recognise them as we're going along, as you cut them, just jot the name of them onto the piece. So I've got the front base here and the back base, the centre and the back, and that will just make it easier as we're going along and constructing. So we're going to begin now with the 2 side pieces, which are the largest pieces, so easy to identify, and we're actually going to cut out the section for the stair. So I've got a little template here that we're going to use for that. Okay, so to shape the side pieces, we're going to begin by making a pencil mark in the centre of the longest edge. Now, you should have cut your piece so that the grain of the wood is in the direction of the longest edge, so that's how to identify it. But if not, just measure across there. That should be your 32mm measurement across there. And then just make a little pencil mark in the centre and at the top of the piece as well. Turn and join that line up. Place the rule just below the marks to allow for the thickness of your pencil. And then coming up from what will become the bottom edge there, we're going to make a pencil mark at 18mm, and in inches that is 45/64 of an inch. So 18mm, and just on that side of the line there, and at the other edge of the wood as well. 18mm, 45/64 of an inch, and again join that line up. So this back bottom section here is the one that we're going to be removing. I'm going to shade that there like that. And then whenever you're cutting a section from a piece of wood, you need to cut against the grain first. And I just like to start just by doing a little nick in the corner there. So just where those lines meet, like that, and then do it along the other line as well, so in the direction of the grain. Just put in like a little V shape in the corner there, or a little L shape. And then you can bring in your rule and actually cut along the line that's against the grain of the wood. And just by having that little nick there, you won't go over the line. It'll stop you from going too far. So cut through like that. Just sort of keep going until you can feel that you're through, and then you can go along the grain of the wood. And if you were to do it the other way around, you're sort of likely to split the piece all the way across. So you'll have a piece that looks like that. So do that with both of those pieces, and don't be tempted just to lay that on there and draw around it, as your square, your cutout, will be slightly out because of the thickness of your pencil. So do make the measurements. And I'll be watching, so don't think you can cheat. Okay, so we're now going to construct the basket. So I've laid my pieces out here. So the front piece there, which is the sort of taller of the pieces, then the front base, the centre, the back base and the back, and that's how we're sort of going to apply the pieces. And I haven't practiced this, so I'm hoping this method works, and we're actually going to sort of make them almost like steps, and then we'll put the remaining side on like that. We'll be sort of boxing all of those sections in. So I've got here a couple of spare pieces of strip just to help sort of line the pieces up. So begin by applying glue to a long edge of the front piece. And then sit that along the front edge of the shaped piece. So sort of get it roughly in place, and then you can bring in your piece of strip and just line both pieces up against the strip so that you're right along that front edge, And make sure as well that you've got nice flush lines along the top and bottom of the piece as well. Press that like that. Then sort of have a look along that front line and make sure that you have got that nice flush edge along there. We're then going to bring in the front base, and that piece is going to sit along there like that. And if you've written on your pieces as I have, you might just want to have it so that the writing is on the inside, but we are going to be covering it, so it doesn't really matter too much. So apply glue along a long and a short edge of that piece. I'm just going to bring that strip back in to hold that there when I position the base piece. Again, flush with the bottom edge of both of those pieces, right into that corner. That good press into place. My front piece is coming out there, but once we've got all the pieces in and we get that next side on, it will be a lot more solid. So if things start moving around, just sort of press them all back where they should go, or gently ease them back into position. And if you do have time, then do sort of try and wait in between steps. I always sort of hurry on for the sake of the video, but you should really sort of allow the glue to begin to take. So the next piece, which is the centre, will sit in there. So begin by applying a little bit of glue along the edge of that base piece, and then along the side of your centre piece. And this piece is square, so you can choose any side to apply the glue to. I'll sit that along there, again making sure that it's flush along that bottom edge. Like that. And just because this is so fragile, I think I'll just let that dry off for a moment or two, and then we'll continue along the back edge. Okay, so we're now going to attach the back base, and that's going to sit along that cutout there and actually touch the top of that centre piece. So begin by just putting a little bit of glue along the top of the centre there. Now this piece is only 0.5 millimetre out, but you'll need to position it so that the grain, or the longest edge, is running sort of from up and down. And then you want to put the glue along your shortest edge, so against your grain. Get the writing on the inside again. So make sure it's flush along the back edge, and then just sit in on top of your centre piece there. You can bring that in as well and sort of push it against that. Push it against that centre. Give it all a gentle press, and then let's try and get our back piece in, and that is going to sit obviously along that back edge there. So apply glue to a long and a short edge. Position it so you've got a nice flush back edge and top edge, and then pull that back base in to meet it. So we've got a nice flush back edge there. That. Probably should let that dry off again just for a moment or two, and then we'll attach that remaining side. Okay, so now apply glue to all the open edges. Like that. And then bring in your remaining side. Get all of the edges as flush as you can. Be really gentle with it all, especially if it's not sort of completely dry yet. Don't worry if you have any slight overhangs, because we'll sand this off once it's all completely dry and before we add the fabric and the cord. But just sort of go around and pull all the pieces out so it all meets and joins up. Get it as square as you can. Okay, and that piece can then be left to dry. So once you've allowed enough time for that to dry off completely, sand it on all edges. just be really careful with it. And to get along sort of these areas here, if you just sort of put your cutting mat with your sandpaper on it over the edge of your desk, you can sort of go along like that so that the overhanging part is just hanging over the edge of your desk, and you can do that on both of those areas. And we're now going to add a little bit of lining to the basket. So I'm using here this canvas, or I think it's also known as suit lining, and we're just going to line the sort of top area of the basket, so we won't be pushing it all the way down, but then you won't be able to see all the way into the basket. So this is just to hide the wood at the top there. So you want to cut a piece that is going to wrap all the way around the basket with a bit of an overlap. And then I've done mine about 1 inch high, or 25mm high, so we'll have plenty to tuck inside. So just begin by applying a bit of glue to the inside edges and about the sort of height of the shallowest piece of the basket, all the way around. And put a little bit onto the flat edge in there as well. And then just go around the outside edge, so just, I don't know, 5mm down or something like that. Doesn't have to be exact. Okay, so lay the fabric along the front of the basket like that, glue it down, and then wrap it around the sides. And then bring one of those flaps around at the back there, and then just apply a little bit more glue to the overhang at the back there. Glue that down. Trim a bit off if you need to. I probably should have done, but I'll leave it now. And then you want to tuck that in. So if you come in at the front and back like that to create those triangles, and then push all of that in. So we're going to push it against the sides in there. And don't worry about all this excess, because we can trim that off. Push it down at the front as far as you can. Push it against the back and sides. Keep this outside edge nice and flat, and these top fold overs, for use of a better word. And then just lift up those triangles, and we'll just trim those off. Make sure you're not taking too much, just so we've just sort of got a flap going onto the sides there. I'll take a little bit off the side and back as well. Press all that down again. And then just cut another little flap of fabric that will fit onto the visible base in there, and that we can then just tuck down into the bottom. And I'm going to apply the glue this time directly to the fabric. I'm just going to hold on to that with tweezers. Just means you don't get as much glue on your fingers. Like that. And just lay that in there. Get my finger in to hold it down. Like that. Press it down, and then poke it into that bottom part of the basket. And that will just neaten that up. So to cover the basket and actually create that sort of basket weave effect, I'm going to be using this 1mm waxed cord. Now these baskets also can be covered just in fabric, so you can do it that way if you like, or you might want to use a finer cord. But just remember, the finer the cord, obviously the more you're going to need and the longer it's going to take to actually wrap around our basket. So I quite like this 1mm cord, and I think it looks nice and realistic as well. So we're actually going to begin by making a handle. Now if you wanted to do a little plait and use that, then you can, but I'm actually just going to use one piece of the cord. And I think that looks quite nice and not too chunky for a handle. And that will just go across the centre like that. So measure it out. You can have it as long or as short as you like. I'll probably go About like that, I think. So make a little mark of where you want to cut that. And then we're going to stick that into place right across the centre, and that's where our cutout begins. So apply a bit of glue on either side. And lay that into place. Put my finger in the glue. Like that. Press it down at either side. And we're now ready to start applying the cord around the basket. So we're going to start around that bottom section, so we'll treat it as two separate sections. So apply glue around the back, front and sides. I'm just using my Gorilla Wood glue for this. I find it works really well for things like this. Around the front there as well. And then take your cord and attach it at the back of that front section, and about in the centre there. So hold onto the piece of cord, and this can be quite tricky, but once you've been around a couple of times it gets easier. And be prepared to get your fingers nice and gluey as well. And then just start wrapping it round so that you're sort of sitting nice and flat against the wood, and so that you're right along that bottom edge there. And you want to pull it fairly tightly and keep the rounds as close together as you can as well, so you haven't got any gap in. And just keep going around. I see there my handler's just pinged up, but don't worry, we'll glue that back down. And we'll be covering it round with cord to sort of really hold it in place as well. If you've taken your time to get going and your glue starts to dry, just apply a little bit more. And you can push them down like that as well to make sure that all of the sort of rounds are close together. Just going to unravel the cord. So I had a bit of a knot in my cord, so I've applied a bit more glue and stuck my handle back down at the same time. So I'm just going to keep going around until I reach that stepped part. And don't worry about glue showing through the cord either, because that will all dry clear. So once you reach the top of that section, you can hold on to that part that you've covered and then apply glue around the top part. Probably just sort of, I don't know, 1/2 millimetre below the top of the fabric there. And just around the sides, front and back. A little bit over the sides of the handle as well. And then you can continue to wind, and this time go all the way around the back. Again, keep all of the cords nice and close together. Make sure you've got nice neat edges along the bottom of the stepped part as well. Unfortunately, the side that will be near the wall in my doll's house is neater than the other side. That's always the way. I'm just going to try and pull those down a little bit because I've got a little bit of wood showing at the bottom there. So just manoeuvre. You've got time to do that while the glue is still damp. And again, if you need to just apply a little bit more glue around that top area just to get that final strand in, then do that. And then I'm going to snip that off along that back edge. A little bit more glue. Glue that down. Give it all a good press. And now I want to finish that off just with a little plait around the top edge. Okay, so to measure for the plait, it's normally about 2.5 to 3 times the sort of circumference of the basket. I always go 3 times just to be on the safe side, because obviously as you're plaiting, your cord is becoming shorter. So that's 2 and then 3, and that's going to be more than we need. But I'd rather have more there than, you know, you go to put the plait on and it isn't long enough and you have to do it again. So you want to cut 3 pieces to that length. I'm sure you all know how to do a plait. That gives you room as well then for a sort of good knot at one end. So knot those 3 together. Pull that nice and tightly. And then I've got here a nice tight bulldog clip, and I use that to clip the strands against my craft mat. Like that, and then you can begin your plait. Obviously if you've got somebody that can hold on to that for you, then that makes it easier. So keep it nice and tight. Okay, so work towards the end. And because we've done extra, you can sort of tie it off before you get right to the end. I'm going to knot it off there. Again, nice tight knot in there. I'm trying to stay on camera, let me move along a little bit. Not giving myself any slack. Like that. Pull that along. Pull it nice and tightly, and then you can remove that. And now we can attach that to the basket. So we're going to sit the plait around the top of the fabric area and on the inside of the handle. I'll just show you where that's going to sit. So it will sit flat around that top edge. That on the inside. So apply glue around that top edge of fabric. Okay, so we're going to begin by gluing the plait down at the back. So we're going to trim, obviously trim the knot off. So go from sort of where it starts to get tight, a little way along the back there, and just press that into place. And then work it around, and I just trimmed that other knot off so it's easier to sort of get through the handle and everything. Press it down around the corner like that. Again, if your glue starts to dry out, just put a little bit more on as you go around. Or if you put your fingers in it like I do. Just put a little bit more on that front edge. I'm holding the plait into place as I do that. Give it a chance to sort of dry into place. Come around that front corner. So now that's started to dry, I'm going to trim that knot off. And quickly stick that down, so it doesn't have a chance to unravel, and then continue round. Okay, I'm just going to apply a little bit more on that back edge there. Shape your corner first and sort of work out where you need to trim it, and then snip and stick nice and quickly. If it does start to unravel, just sort of, press it all together with your fingers. You want that back bit to be as neat as possible. That's pretty neat there. If it really does sort of mess up and you're not happy with it, you can always do a little display of things that need taking upstairs in your basket and cover that up, so nobody will ever know. So have a look sort of around all the edges and make sure that you're happy with how that's sitting. You've still got a little bit of time to sort of jiggle things around before the glue has completely dried, so make sure it's covering on that sort of top edge of fabric. And there is our completed stair basket. So let's go and put this into place in the doll's house. Okay, so that is going to sit just there. I think that looks really good. Now this is designed so that you can put it on any stair, so if you don't want it at the bottom of the stairs there, you can go up a couple, or one or two. And as I said earlier, I think that would look really good with some bits and pieces in there, maybe some sort of items of clothing, or the indication of that, you could just perhaps put some fabric in and have a sleeve hanging over the edge or something like that, or perhaps a little selection of toys, or some wool, or a little blanket or something like that. Now, if you have a go at making this, I would love to see what you do with it and whether you use the cord or whether you use fabric for yours. Once you've got that sort of basic design, how you cover it really is up to you. But that's it for today. I really hope you've enjoyed this quick and easy tutorial, and I'll see you again soon for another episode of my Doll's House Diary. So until then, take care. Bye.